Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and LEGO just unveiled the brand new LEGO Icons Lord of the Rings Barad Dur set. This has been a set I've been so excited to get for months now, ever since I first saw it in September. But for the focus of this video, we are going to be diving into an in-depth look at all of the minifigures included in the set, because of course we just published a full review of the build, and we'll also be doing some direct comparisons between these minifigures and the older Lord of the Rings figures that came before, whether they were the older versions of the characters or just other types of the same character like the orcs. Hopefully this will provide a pretty clear example of how much LEGO has changed in their graphic design and minifigure development over the years, but also how some things really don't change. And so let's dive in to the minifigures of LEGO Icons 10333 Lord of the Rings Barad Dur. Barad Dur contains 10 minifigures, including Sauron, the Mouth of Sauron, a few orcs, Frodo, Sam, Gollum, and Gothmog. Each of these minifigures are exclusive to the set, and obviously the most exciting one is Sauron. This is the very first time we have gotten arguably the main villain of the Lord of the Rings universe in brick-built form, and he looks absolutely phenomenal. Alongside Sauron though, we also get a brand new multi-pack of Orc Helmets that come in all different shapes and sizes, which is a good thing because it means that they basically had the budget for only one new helmet mold, but they were able to expand it to multiple, allowing you to actually have so many different sizes and shapes in the set, but is a downside because it probably means that we won't be getting any of these Orc Helmets in any other sets other than this one, because it is so specific, and if you get one, you have to get them all. That's pretty much how multi-packs work. One of the cool things though is that they did actually manage to mold new helmets for Frodo and Sam in their orc disguises, which we'll take a closer look at later on in the video, as well as have two separate styles of molds for the helmets of the orcs themselves, so we really got treated to a lot of specialized new molds in the set itself. And while Frodo and Sam are pretty much the same versions that appeared in last year's Rivendell, it's still pretty perfect to get them. And speaking of new molds, we also have a brand new Gollum mold. This one is completely changed from the original version. They have made it more fit within the standard LEGO style, and we'll be taking a much closer look at him as well. But of course, I do want to start off by taking a look at Sauron, who is, in my opinion, the most important minifigure included in the set. Now, personally, I've seen a lot of controversy online since the reveal of this minifigure, with a lot of people not being super happy with the rubberized helmet and armor component, because maybe if they included it in gunmetal gray and made it a solid piece, or better yet, two pieces, a helmet and armor, that might have felt a little bit more bulky and just a little bit more useful for customization. I'll share my thoughts on that later on, but I do just want to showcase the minifigure itself first, taking a look at the minifigure without the cape and without the helmet. The fiery eyes is a really nice head print, although I kinda wish we did just get the singular eye printed on the head itself, maybe even on the back of the head. I feel like that would have made for a really interesting LEGO piece, but this is okay as well. The armor is very good, but I think the biggest complaint that I've also seen people talk about, and I really wish they did do, was that Sauron appears in the movies as a towering giant, taller than any of the other characters, and they literally have longer legs for tall characters that they are using throughout Harry Potter and Avatar. They originated with Woody from Toy Story, so they have long legs and long arms. They just didn't do it for Sauron, and I feel like that is a bit of a miss, because I personally would have loved it if he was just a lot taller than the other minifigures to really sell how imposing and terrifying it would be to face him in battle. Otherwise, I do also want to showcase the rubberized helmet and armor mold, and typically I'm not the biggest fan when LEGO combines the helmets with armor, because I like to be able to turn a character's head, but honestly for this minifigure it doesn't really bother me that much, and if making it one single piece meant that we were able to get stuff like the Orc family pack of multiple different helmet molds, then I think it's a worthwhile compromise. So whose side am I on when it comes to whether or not the helmet armor piece should have been a single molded plastic piece versus rubber? It's honestly hard to say. I will say that the rubberized piece looks exactly the same as a gunmetal gray plastic piece would have looked, so it doesn't really aesthetically bother me that much. It just is something I do want to point out. It's the way that it's done, and aside from that, yeah, maybe it would have been better, but maybe LEGO decided it was a bit too spiky, and for quality control standards, they decided not to make it a single plastic mold. Whatever the decision making was behind that, it doesn't bother me that much, especially having the figure in hand, but I do totally understand why some people would have really preferred it to be an actual molded singular plastic component. One thing I will say is that we have actually gotten a glimpse of what Sauron could look like in minifigure form in LEGO Dimensions and LEGO Lord of the Rings, two different LEGO video games where we were actually supposed to get Sauron as a minifigure before Dimensions performed pretty poorly and was cancelled, so I honestly wish that we actually got that minifigure instead. I do feel like having a separate mold for the head and armor would have been really great, and I generally just really do like the design of the armor and molding pieces for that particular figure. Although in terms of graphic design, the new figure is leagues ahead, so there are definitely pros and cons, and it's still absolutely the highlight figure of the set. Is it perfect? No, but I still like it for what it is. Of course, we did technically kind of get a Sauron minifigure in the past, and that was the Necromancer of Dol Guldur, who was eventually revealed in The Hobbit to be just kind of like an avatar of Sauron. Obviously, they're not really meant to depict the same form, so the new one absolutely beats the older one, but I just felt like it was interesting to compare the two and see how the differences in graphic design and printing have come a long way. Moving on from that though, we can take a look at the next main character in the set, which is the Mouth of Sauron. This is actually the second time we've ever gotten the Mouth of Sauron as a LEGO minifigure, and compared to the original one that we got at the Battle of the Black Gate in 2013, this is surprisingly remarkably close to that original 2013 version. However, since LEGO does destroy molds after 5 years of not being used, this is a brand new mold, which is also rubberized for the head itself, which we'll take a look at later on. First, I do want to showcase the head and torso and leg prints unencumbered by the helmet or cape. And again, it is pretty simple. This was a fairly plain design in the movies. There's not really much to mess up here because it was a character that appeared for a pretty short amount of time but left a pretty significant impact. I, for one, am a big fan of how they did the mouth and the head. They didn't even need to go ahead and print the back of the head, but they did anyway just to add that extra level of detail. And I also really like how they have the black of the back shroud of the head before it goes to the helmet itself really actually feel like it is fabric going along the back and the top of the head itself. Compared to the original version, which we'll do in a second, I do really like this newer mold a lot. I feel like it's much better sculpted and just adds a little bit more detail, as is expected of a piece made over 10 years after the original one, but it is also surprising to see in terms of the graphic design just how little has actually changed on the figure itself. The one thing I do want to note is that for whatever reason they only use the standard LEGO Castle 2013 sword for this character. Personally, I feel like maybe utilizing the Tournament Knight sword from the collectible minifigure series might have been a little bit of a better accessory. I just feel like that would have been a bit more detailed, but it's not bad, just something I do want to point out. And otherwise, I'm pretty happy with the level of detail included on this figure. Bringing alongside the older version as the counterpart to do some direct comparisons, it is again interesting to see how little has changed on the torso and leg printing. Sure, we have a couple more fabric lines and there's just a little bit more detail factored into the way it's done, but even comparing the helmet mold to the older version, there's not a lot of difference in the way they actually accomplished this, and they actually gave the older version a gunmetal gray sword as opposed to silver, which I kind of prefer a little bit better. Now, taking a look at just the helmets in comparison, I feel like the coloration of the newer helmet matching the gunmetal gray on a rubberized piece, because both are rubberized, is done a little bit better for the newer one, and the black in particular on the back is a lot more shiny and crisp as compared to the pretty dull coloration on the original one. But otherwise, it is really interesting to see how LEGO basically just took the older torso design and slightly updated it, right down to the print of the silver locket or brooch type of emblem on the chest being literally identical to the original figure. It's pretty rare that LEGO will just take the design that they did for an older figure and basically just bring it into the modern age, but I guess this is an instance of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Of course, I do prefer the newer torso and legs just a little bit more. They're basically the same thing, but they just added slightly more detail in the lines, making it not just be a plain black torso in certain areas. So it is improved, but really only just barely. And some could even argue that the older helmet mold might be a little bit more interesting because they had a kind of specialized type of molding for the top of the head to really make it feel like it's less uniform and more tattered in the way the cloth is done. Overall, super cool to display these next to each other. Definitely like the teeth print being a lot yellower and more pronounced on the new one as well, so I do think the head is greatly improved, and if you're curious, this is what the old helmet looks on the new figure and vice versa, in case you're curious about how the differences in the helmet shaping have been changed over the years. But with that, we can move on to the Lieutenant of the Witch King, one of the only named orcs that we really get to know throughout the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and that is Gothmog. Gothmog totally makes sense to include in a set like this because he is commonly associated with Mordor, and I feel like they did a really good job of depicting the head of the character, especially when you compare it to the actual sculpt of the makeup on the actor's face back in the movies. They really were able to capture the expression, the kind of twisted and gnarled face really well, and I think that this is a pretty fitting minifigure of a character that we also never got from the original Lord of the Rings sets, where surprisingly, somewhat, we never actually got this named orc character. Instead, LEGO just decided to give us some generic orcs back in the day. You do have the option to place one of the other orc helmets on Gothmog. While I don't think he necessarily wears this particular one in any of the movies, I feel like it does suit him, and it is actually really interesting because they never actually use that particular helmet mold for any of the minifigures in this set. It literally is just kind of a bonus, so personally I'm going to leave it on him because I just feel like it adds a lot to the character, but I do think it is cool just to see the level of detail that went into this. You have the gunmetal gray torso, printing that looks really crisp and great, and of course printing on the breastplate as well, and I do appreciate how this is slightly different, suggesting that there's actual armor underneath the armor itself, so you can actually use the torso and the armor plate for different things. And overall, this is just a really well-produced minifigure for one of the more prominent orcs in the Lord of the Rings franchise. Not much else I have to say about this one. Moving on from that though, we can take a look at the next figures, and then we can move on to the generic orcs. Now there are a number of generic orcs included in the set itself, and this first one here is actually reusing the LEGO Harry Potter goblin head mold. That was a hair and ear combo introduced for the goblins in Harry Potter, but I think it works totally fine for orcs. I do kind of miss the more stringy hair that the older ones got, and that mold is definitely now discontinued, but the big benefit of this mold is that you can actually turn the head all the way, which is quite nice. The orcs are equipped with a new Uruk-hai shield, and while I don't necessarily agree with the positioning of the handle on the shield, I do feel the mold is generally superior to the original one, being just a little bit slimmer and easier for the minifig to carry with some crisper printing on it, but with the accessories removed, this is what one of those orcs looks like. It's an olive green coloration of orc, and again, you do have a ton of extra helmets included in the set, so you do have the option to be able to swap helmets on and off, and that's what he looks like with the helmet itself. And I appreciate that they did actually give us this option where if you want to display it with just no helmet, kind of a more casual sort of environment, you can do that, or you can put the helmets on and have a completely different look. Now this character does have an alternate face, although both of them are pretty equally grotesque and gruesome, just different variations of snarls, which you can see here, and I do like the consistency throughout the printing of the minifig itself. You have the dark tan fur, silver armor, brown belt, and then just some black little bits in the back that really make it feel like there are multiple layers to the detail itself. They didn't go super crazy on detail and make it over detailed like they have done for some minifigures. This feels like just the right amount of style you would want to get for a minifigure. It is just a shame though that the shield has the handle mounted on a vertical point, because if you want to have them hold the shields close to their chests, the shields are always going to be at an angle. I always like it having the handle mounted on the horizontal axis rather than the vertical axis, so you actually have the option to bend it that way rather than just bend it side to side. You can bend it up and down, but it is what it is, and we can move on to the next orc. The next one here is one that does come with the helmet attached, so no actual hairpiece included for this one. You are told to just put the helmet on, but again, you have good consistency with the armoring of the orcs. The dark tan continues to be a bit of a color scheme aesthetic that they continue to use for the minifigures to make it feel like all of them are kind of having their armor sewn together with the same types of cloth. It's also gunmetal gray, but this one actually has a maliciously happy expression on one side where he's kind of chuckling. Perhaps meat is indeed back on the menu for this orc, so that's why he's so happy, but that's what this one looks like. Good printing even on the toes to really just make this feel exceptionally detailed, and overall just a really nice additional orc to add to your armies. For me, I really wish that they did something like an orc battle pack or something like a smaller set where we would get stuff like this, because I feel like it is almost wasted to have such good army building characters included in a $650 set, but it is what it is. The next orc here is surprisingly also different. All of the orcs are completely unique. They did not use any of the same torsos or leg prints for them. And this one is the Blacksmith Orc. So this one is actually crafting some of the swords, and that's why he's wielding Mjolnir there, or just kind of a regular hammer in the Lord of the Rings universe. And this one forgoes all of the fur and instead has the orc primarily using armor plates, which I guess makes sense because you wouldn't want the fur to catch on fire when doing a blacksmith operation. Much like the other orcs, there are many other helmets which you can choose to incorporate on this figure as well. And again, this one might be one of my favorite ones because it just feels very clean in the design. It is gunmetal gray with just a little bit of that olive green skin showing, and I'm pretty happy with the amount of detail here. The armor is adequately stained, you have some bits of wear and tear and damage being done to the figure itself that make it feel more lived in and realistic, and that's always good when you want orcs. And then we get to the final one, and this is the Chef Orc, although of course you can replace the bandana with an actual helmet. This is for the restaurant in Barad Dur, which we talked about in our review a few days ago, and this is just another one that has a pretty interesting color scheme. Dark red arms and gunmetal gray being used as a consistency throughout the orcs is really nice because I feel like the arms really differentiate them by all being different colors, but the gunmetal gray really ties them all back together. This one has that kind of darker, fleshy nougat color being used for the head there, which is always a good color to get. I think it's like a medium nougat color. And here's what it looks like with the helmet. I think it's a little bit more menacing, and you can definitely use him for army building, especially with the helmets on. But with the Pirates 2015 bandana, I think it works as well. Would it have been nice to get a recolor of it in dark red? Yes, but not necessarily the most important thing to cover. Of course, I did actually want to bring alongside some older orcs to do some direct comparisons. This is just an example orc from 2012, and you can see these slight differences in how LEGO actually designed these figures this time around. I actually am a much bigger fan of the orcs in the newest set having a primarily gunmetal gray color scheme rather than dark brown. It just makes them feel a little bit more armored up. It makes them feel definitely more menacing as an army to be decked out in armor versus what looks to be more like leather and scrap pieces added together, so I do actually like that change. And compared to some of the trolls and goblins and other characters in the Lord of the Rings series like this one here, I definitely do feel that actually allowing the advances in technology over the years, because LEGO didn't used to be able to reliably mold minifigure pieces in gunmetal colors, has led to a big deal of change, where the older ones mostly had a dark gray color scheme and some didn't even have printed legs, but the newer ones of a very similar style actually have a gunmetal gray torso legs and have full-on printing in much greater detail than the older figures. So these are absolutely an improvement in pretty much every single way. But with that, we can now move on towards Gollum, and Gollum is one of the most interesting figures included in the set. I alluded a little bit towards this in my early review of the tower, but one of the things that does interest me and honestly kind of bothers me a little bit is his lack of a nose. Now, I do understand why LEGO did this. They have been making an effort to basically standardize graphic design across all minifigures across all themes. Minifigures don't have noses, so why does a famously nose-less character have the indication of nose slits printed on him? It doesn't make sense for him to have a nose when nobody else does, so LEGO chose not to do it, but I think that I've just grown so accustomed to the LEGO version of Gollum including a nose that it feels kind of weird to me, the facial print just having no nose whatsoever and just being two eyes in the mouth. It certainly is a lot more creepy than previous versions of the character, which I always felt like was a little bit more on the funny side and the goofy side, even the more menacing ones that we got for some of the other sets, but I don't know, this one is really interesting in the way they've done the print. Unfortunately, the older arms that they did use for Gollum, which originated from Fishface in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, are definitely no longer in production, so the elongated arms had to go. They are just using a new recolor of the Ninjago skeleton arms in tan for the figure itself, although it definitely is a little bit difficult to articulate the arms. Sometimes when you raise them up, they do conflict with the head and kind of stretch outwards, and I definitely miss the longer arms that Gollum used to have because I felt like they worked just so much better for the character. But, you know, it is what it is. There definitely isn't a mold that really needed to exist and stay existing, so I know why LEGO discontinued it, but it is a little bit sad that that piece no longer exists for you to use. Moving on from that though, in the direct comparison to the older version itself, you can actually see that pretty much they've done almost the exact same thing, except they've just put the other leg up instead of the right leg, you get the left leg, and so on and so forth. So it's just a little bit of a shift in terms of how you actually want to pose the character, but otherwise the molds are incredibly similar. So similar, in fact, I've seen people confuse it for the older mold. And LEGO actually does have to reintroduce Gollum, unfortunately, because the last time we got him was for LEGO Dimensions back in 2015, and spoiler alert, it's been more than 5 years since 2015, which means all the molds are destroyed, and they basically had to come up with a new one for this set. Now, for Gollum, they did change the color of the loincloth there, which I think works a little bit better. They also tried to mold it in near the bottom. You can see the spikes there, so I do think that is a good improvement over the original, but otherwise it is interesting to see the comparison. Definitely wish the arms were a little bit better, and you can actually try out the older arms on the new figure, and that to me kind of makes the perfect Gollum because the longer arms just add so much to the design of the character. I feel like they just look a lot better on the figure than the regular Ninjago skeleton arms, but it is what it is. That piece no longer exists, and otherwise it is a nice representation of Gollum. I just do wonder if we're going to be getting any other Lord of the Rings sets, because this seems to be just another one of the one-off molds that they created just for this set. And moving on from that, we can finally take a look at the only two protagonists or heroes in the set, and that is Sam and Frodo. Now, Sam and Frodo are actually unchanged from their original Rivendell appearance last year, and since I already did minifigure comparisons then, I'm not going to bring back the older versions of Frodo and Sam for this. But I will note that once again, the facial expressions are really good for the characters. The dual molding on the short legs is a massive improvement over the original ones, which basically just had plain legs. I think that is a really big improvement because, of course, hobbits are barefoot, and it is cool getting a little bit of an interesting accessory switch up for the figures. Unfortunately, I will say that they don't actually have the most accurate accessories they could have because they made a multi-pack of weapons for Rivendell, which did include Sting and all these specialized swords, but because that they had included a ton of other swords there that wouldn't be relevant for this set, they chose not to include it in this one, and Frodo is Sting-less. So it is what it is. Most of the scenes in Mordor he didn't have it anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much, but that's just something I want to point out. Much more interesting, however, are the new helmet molds introduced for Frodo and Sam, which are meant to mimic their orc disguises as they snuck through Mordor. They're really interesting, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of applications for these helmet pieces to be used outside of just this set. I certainly hope there is a way to acquire them cheaply or just an easier way to get them, because so far these are really interesting castle pieces. I'm sure that the castle folks would absolutely love to be able to use these pieces in armies and get a ton of them and actually have these kind of almost eagle or plague doctor nosed beaks on both of the helmets there make up a new castle faction of their own, but unfortunately they are pretty much just locked to the one multi-pack included in this set. Still, they are very accurate and definitely make the figures feel a lot more interesting than the original counterparts that we got in Rivendell, and I feel like this is pretty much the only set where it even makes sense to include those disguises, but I guess they had a little bit of extra budget. They decided to go all out and depict the minifigures with these specialized helmets. And with that, we've about summed up our look at all of the figures included in detail in the brand new LEGO Icons Lord of the Rings Barad Dur set, and I'm really curious which ones are your favorites. You gotta let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the changes made from the originals to the new figures, and that's pretty much all for this video. Alright, and with that, we have finished our look at all of the brand new minifigures of the Barad Dur set from LEGO Lord of the Rings. I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at some of the incredible minifigures included in the set. Sauron, of course, being the highlight, but also really cool to get a new version of the Witch King, and those new helmets for the orcs are absolutely sublime, and honestly, they went above and beyond with the character design here. That's all for this video. Let's hope that LEGO will continue producing Lord of the Rings stuff, and let me know in the comments, out of all the figures, well, maybe not Sauron because everyone's gonna say it, but which figure is your favorite included in the set? Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon, and bye for now.